Hey everybody. I hope your month is going really well. We're live. I think we're live. I think it's time to go. All right. Hey everybody, I hope your April is treating you super duper well. I hope that National Poetry Month has somehow put you in touch with poetry. And I think that being in touch with poetry is being in touch with part of what is human. Let me explain that really quickly before we get into what's on my screen right now. Is that there's something about poetry, and there's something about being human, and there's something about being one of God's children that is very linked together. Is that how to say it? Yeah. We have to talk to each other in words. There are nonverbal communications. There are hugs. There are winks. There are things like that that we can do. There are smirks. There are grins. There are scowls. There are nonverbal communications. However, most of the way that we speak to each other is verbal communication. And so, the way I would like to think about the way we look at poetry, right, is that imagine for a second, and if there's anybody out there who actually has this disability, it probably mean more to you than anybody else, but just think about this. If you were to lose an arm, let's say, just like you lose an arm, either in war or a construction accident or something or anything, right? That the way that you touch the world, the way that you touch reality will be different with that arm if you get a prosthetic on it, right? And the way that I think that we use words in our daily lives for whatever purpose possible is we use words as a prosthetic. We use our words as a way to try to reach out closer and to touch reality. And I think that poetry helps us do that. So, the same way that our words in poetry help describe the human experience, help describe our relationship with the world around us, our relationship with God, whatever our conception of that is, in any faith, in any religion, our conception of something bigger than ourselves, right? Poetry is a way to help that happen. Poetry is that prosthetic limb that allows us to reach out beyond ourselves and talk about experience in a new and different way. So I'm going to read a poem really quickly here. This is from, just so everybody has the background information. This is a poem from the Squaw Valley Poetry Collective's literary journal, which I had the privilege of editing in 2017 by a poet named Gregory Pardlow, excuse me, who I must say, during the Squaw Valley Poetry Collective, we were playing softball together, and Gregory hit a line drive to right field. Boom! And the ball got thrown back in, and I tagged him out before he got to second base. So if Gregory Pardlow, if you ever hear this, I got you, bro. I got you, and I got you. But Gregory is one of the most amazing human beings you will ever have the pleasure to meet. And so this is his poem. We're gonna in the context of what I was talking about earlier about how we use words as a prosthetic to get closer to reality that we can get without them, right? And how we never succeed in that. Again, so to use we're talking, go back to the first week of this session, right? Metaphor. The way that we approach the world is always grounded in metaphor. Has to be, always is, no doubt about it. So the way that we use words to get closer, right, is part of the metaphor of a prosthesis. If you don't have an arm, you can't touch, you can't hold the glass of water. You can't flip the pancake with your own hand. You can't feel reality. Our words are always doing that. Our words never are adequate to express the reality in front of us, right? And so this poem is one of my favorite ones as far as trying to overcome that burden by being normal in the way it's talking about the world we all live in and the world we all, for better or worse, co-inhabit. I think just one thing before, I know there's a lot of pretext, a lot of Aaron talking about this and that, but it's important to note, I think, here, there's a very, very human experience that's being communicated in this poem. There's no fake, there's no funk, there's no anything cray cray. There is something genuine and lovely in this poem, and Gregory Partlow does such a great job. I embiggened it too much. Small. Okay. This is Gregory Parlow's Convertible, which he wrote at the Poetry Workshop. I was with him when I tagged him out at second base. Gregory, if you see this, you know it's true. No lies. Convertible. My pop let me steer when I was small enough to snug between his belly and the wheel. Any random intersection, he might hoist me across the handbrake onto his lap to pilot the carnival ride until he put me in my place to stay until my arms were useful enough to steer while he lit a smoke or shed his jacket. Let's just talk about this, okay? I don't know how many people out there who will see this are fathers. I'm a father. My oldest daughter, Alexi Catherine, Little Miss, Lexi Lou, right? I used to live in Noonan, Georgia. I used to own a diesel Volkswagen Passat. And when we got out off the highway from Atlanta, we drove down the main street and we turned onto the back road by the apartments we lived. We were like, Lexi, let's pull over. She's like, okay, Daddy, pull over. I'm like, okay, Lexi, sit in my lap. She would sit in my lap, and I would let her drive the rest of the 2 blocks and the right turn into the parking lot. Of course, she was in my lap, right? But I would let her take the car with my hands over her hands, just making sure everything was okay. I would let her drive the car from that turn all the way back to the parking lot. She was 9 years old at the time, right? And she was small enough to fit snug between my ever-growing belly and the steering wheel at that point in time. And so there's something just very real about this. There's something that the language here in this first sentence describes an experience. And it doesn't matter if the particular experience, it doesn't matter if the father is, it's the experience of a father helping a kiddo, right? Whether it's a boy or a girl kiddo, helping them feel grown up, helping them feel like they're part of the world. And as a father, that's one of the most amazing parts of being a father. It's one of the most huge blessings of being a father, is to not only teach the kiddos how to be whole humans, but to get to coach them part of the way. When my daughter got to drive the car, just in this, and I talked to Gregory Partlow about this poem, and this is his memories of an actual experience, wrote in very beautiful poetic language. And we're not even to the first stanza yet. We're not even to the first stanza all the way yet, right? But just the way that language is this thing that exists out there, right? And we use it as a prosthetic to try to touch reality. And this poem touches reality in a big way for me, and I think also for any father or mother, for that matter, who ever watches this. But from the perspective, maybe particularly fathers, but it's not saying one or the other, right? But the whole point is, I've done this. I've been here in my life. I've put my daughter on my lap and let her drive my Volkswagen while we were driving home, right? And he calls it a carnival ride, right? I mean, you think you're having a fun time at the carnival as a 10-year-old kid on the merry-go-round? Well, here's a car. See what you're going to do. And the kid, obviously the dad's protecting him, but it just rings true to me. So when I talk about using language as that prosthetic arm to reach out to touch reality, like this touches reality. And look at the sensation, the words that are part of the sensible world, the gesture, the touch, smell, taste, feel of this scene, right? Fits me snug between his belly and the wheel, right? He would hoist me, pull me as a little kid across the handbrake in the middle of the car, right onto his lap to pilot the carnival ride of the car until he put me in my place to stay, right? All right. And he also says, like, when his dad, it's also kind of some funny and a little bit of shade, throwing a little bit of shade, a little bit of tea out there for his dad, too. That at some points in time, he'd be driving the car because his dad would be like, hey, son, I'm going to take my jacket off. Hey, son, I got to light my cigarette. Take the wheel, son. So dad's got to use two hands to light a cigarette. Dad's got to use two hands to take his jacket off. So son's over here like staring sometimes too. So it's just a very authentic use of language. Okay. Son set over the turnpike like a burst capillary. In time, I learned to boss the road alone. He texted days before he died to say that when a Roman general conquered someplace cool, Caesar would send a slave to ride beside him in the victory parade and tell the general to remember you are only a man. There's a lot there, but we're going to get the context of it from the next stanza before we read that. His ashes arrived. His ashes referring to his father's ashes. His ashes arrived in a cardboard carton with shipping labels and a barcode, heavy enough to trigger the seatbelt alarm as we clipped home. Honeysuckle in the air from the post office. Any normal person would have put the box on the floor, but you know already, don't you? I held him in my lap. You're mine, I told him, the box of dad dust, lifting my hands occasionally to the wind, tempting the evening with our contraption of flesh and steel. That's a good poem. Sorry, guys. That's a good poem. Let's go back through why it works. Let's go back through why this matters so much. Sorry. This poem matters for the world. This poem matters because it talks about, we have like the lovely interaction I talked about before about I put my daughter on my lap when I was trying to teach her to drive a car. So he's talking, so I've had the one side of this, right? Obviously I'm here talking, I'm still among the quick, among the living, among the live, not zombie daddy yet, not dead daddy yet, but one day it's coming. It's coming. And so, again, we reach out using language as a prosthetic to touch that which we cannot know, which we cannot understand. And death is foremost amongst those things. And the fact that this author, that Gregory Pardlo, uses language to flip around the image of him in the driver's seat of the car on his father's lap, right? To contrast that with him holding the urn of his father's ashes after his father died and was cremated in his lap, driving home after he received that. That contrast goes to a very real thing in reality. And that, my friends out there, is that we are food for worms. We will not be here forever. And the most important memories which we have as children, as young adults, as adults, right? Those stick. And they'll stick with us in a way that is deep and is considerate and is replicable in language and only in language. So when he says again, up here, the sunset over the turnpike like a burst capillary. So remember back to the first week of the course here, right? We're using like or as. We are in a simile mode. We're saying the single way that the sun looked over the turnpike, it looked like a burst capillary. Capillary, for anybody who doesn't know, capillaries, you have blood vessels, capillaries, right? Capillaries are return side vessels, and arteries are pump side of the heart. And when you burst a capillary, you get this boom. Like you can, for everybody, just full disclosure, I have a burst capillary on my eye, right here on my eye. That's a burst capillary. There's a red spot that wasn't there before, right? So the sun set over the turnpike like a burst capillary, like a blood vessel popping, right? But in time, Gregory Pardlo, as a child in the first stanza of this poem, right, learned to boss the road alone. Now we go back to the scene that really is the culmination of the poem. What language is trying to reach out and try to do. Language is trying to do something at this moment. What it's trying to do is talk about this connection between father and son, between past and present. He texted me days before he died to say, when a Roman general conquered someplace cool. So again, this is the nice flip, the mix of language, right? A Roman general, do you think like Veni Vidi Vici, right? Caesar conquered Rome. Veni Vidi Vici, right? I came, I saw, I conquered. That's what a Roman general would say, right? But no, he's flipping so brilliantly the use of colloquial language, the use of a language we all use every day. When a Roman general conquered someplace cool, you see how we're going high with the language. We're reaching out towards the past with our prosthetic for that language. We're reaching out now to the present with the lower part of the language, right? Someplace cool. Caesar, again, the one who said Veni Vidi Vici, supposedly, right, would send a slave to ride beside him in the victory parade and tell a general, remember, you're only a man. So this recreates the scene in the first stanza where the author, Gregory Pardlo, is sitting next to his father in the car and being allowed occasionally to drive. And again, he's not telling the slave, remember, you're only a man. No, he's telling the general. Caesar is telling the driver that you are only a man. There's a slave next to you who's the same as you. You are no more human than anyone else. So now we have a stanza break again. So we have a new moment in time. So we have up here, his dad called him 2 days before he died. And then we have below that, right? His ash. No, so we have below that then. Zoom down. His ashes, meaning his father's ashes, arrived in a cardboard box. Or sorry, a cardboard carton. Also, just really quickly, Gregory Pardlo, great work on the cardboard carton. Cardboard box would be better, but cardboard carton. Hey, everybody, what comes in a carton? Milk, eggs. Cartons are flimsy. Cartons aren't sturdy. Cartons are fragile, are breakable, are vulnerable, right? And of course, you get the consonant, the alliteration of cardboard carton, right? Cardboard carton. You have two-syllable alliteration, very well done, right? With shipping labels and a barcode. Like you put, and again, just like thinking, this is where I teared up almost earlier, or maybe a little bit. Who's to say? Who's to say what happened? Who's to say what didn't happen? I have plausible deniability about my tearing up earlier. But just to think about this is the father arrives in a cardboard carton, his ash with shipping labels and a barcode. Your father doesn't arrive at your door with a handshake and a slap on the back and a hug. And how you doing, son? It's been so good to see you. Hey, son, why is your house a mess? Hey, son, I don't like your wife. Hey, son, why is your kid so crazy? Hey, son, why don't you fix your life? None of that. The father arrives in a cardboard carton with shipping labels and a barcode. And again, going back, we have this lovely mix between the ancient and the present, between our ancient understanding of language. Caesar would have a slave ride beside the Roman generals of a conquered town, right? Well, what do we have currently? We have the dad's ashes are heavy enough to trigger the stupid freaking seatbelt alarm in the passenger seat of the car. That's going back to present, right? As well as using language to reach out to our present experience and touch it. Any normal person, so Pardlow, the author, is saying he's not a normal person. So he's admitting vulnerability as an author. He's admitting difference as the author from everybody. What I put on the floor, but you know already. See the I, let me just put this out here, right here. This is great use of everything. This is great. This is great poetics. I dash, so it's saying, but you know already. So it's like you're having a conversation with the author. Like our author here is having a conversation with his dad who's now passed away. He's having a conversation with his dad's ashes. He's having a conversation with his dad in heaven. He's having a conversation with the audience, and he's having a conversation with God. And the conversation right now is with the audience. But you know, I said any normal man would have put the box on the floor. But you know already, don't you? Held them in my lap. He's relying on the language up here. Like, you can tell where this is going. Obviously, because I've been telling you the story honestly and using language as a prosthetic to reach out into the world, you know where this is going. So he's bringing the audience in that moment, and he's driving this dagger of the sorrow in a very real way. Your mind, I told, the box of dad dust, lifting my hands occasionally to the wind, tempting the evening with our contraption of flesh and steel. So I just want to, before we move on to another poem, I want to close on this concluding image, this last bit. The box of dad dust. We get that. The guy's ashes. He died. He was cremated. We're cool with that. It's the image, this picture. Again, we talked in the first or in the second session, rather, last time, about the image in your head, right? The image your language is creating, right? The box of dad dust sitting in his lap, lifting his hands. So he's driving. He's driving the car now. Gregory Pardlow, our poet, is lifting his hands occasionally. So look, mono hands, not holding the car, not holding the steering wheel while he's driving with his dad in his lap, his dad's ashes in his lap. Tempting the evening, tempting reality was the contraption of flesh and steel, which is the car with his live body and his dad's ashes in it. And you can imagine how, going back to the beginning, when his dad used to let him drive, how the son might take hands off the wheel because the says no. So it's like he's reconnecting with his dad in a very real way, even though his dad is just ashes in front of him. And he's connecting with it by tempting fate, by taking his own hands off the wheel. So, great poem, and a great man, Gregory Pardlow. Not such a great baseball player, actually. I mean, I'm not saying he's terrible. I'm saying kicked his ass at baseball at the tournament. And tagged him out, and he didn't get me. I made a in the park homer on that one. So come at me, Gregory Pardlow. Great poem, great poet. Not such a great baseball player. All right, we're gonna go back to. We're gonna go to okay. So I can talk. I mean, I know Gregory. I know what that poem was about, because we talked about it. Like I said, I was the editor of the journal that was published in, so he and I had back and forth about what was going on in that poem. So that's not speaking out of turn. I'm gonna go to one of my poems now. Okay. This one on the right side we'll do next week, which is we're gonna talk about weird uses of language and weird, crazy things you can do with language. Right? That's not this week. This week is the language as a prosthetic to touch our reality week. How we use our language through metaphor and simile and poetry to touch what we can't otherwise know all the way. Okay. And this is my poem that I wrote. So if you hate it, send me the hate mail, send me the YouTube hate chats, whatever. No worries. Facebook, block me, report me, whatever. It's called Funeral Pyre. I'm going to. How should I do it best? All right. I'm going to give you because it's different. So the last poem was about a father and a son in a car growing up, learning how to drive. This poem is set in Iraq. Okay. And the thing too. Okay, so let me talk real quick about the speaker of the poem. This poem is from a speaker's point of view. There is somebody, a fake person, who is viewing this poem, right? Who may or may not be me. The speaker in Gregory Pardlow's poem may or may not be Gregory Pardlow. He may or may not have a dad that's dead. He may or may not have had his dad's ashes in his hand. We don't know. We shouldn't know. We shouldn't care. The speaker in that poem is speaking truth. Not the author of the poem. The speaker in the poem has a world of their own. And they're trying to show us something about human reality. So, with Gregory Pardlow and the poem about the father and the urn and the ashes, or myself and this poem, it does not matter what my life experience. Yes, I was in the Marine Corps. Yes, I did Arabic language. Yes, all that stuff. That's not the point. It doesn't matter. The speaker in the poem here is not me. It's the speaker of the poem. And the speaker of the poem is supposed to be something that anyone, young, old, young, old, not young, in the middle there, a tween, a teen, a Marine, a teen, a tween, a Marine, an Army Ranger, an Air Force person, a Coast Guard guy who's never really done any work in his life, whatever, can identify with the speaker and what they're going through, right? You don't have to have been to Iraq. You don't have to have been to Afghanistan. You don't have to ever even shot a gun. You don't have to have had somebody, die in front of you. That doesn't matter. It's speaking, again, using language as a prosthetic to try to touch the universal human condition. I think we run a danger nowadays in poetry of assuming that all authors are just writing nonfiction, autobiography stuff about themselves. And well, that's true. Like, you write what you know. If you've been through a trauma, write about it. It will help you. That's part of what the Wound Speaks program generally is about. If you've been through some existential crisis, write about it. It will help you sort it out. It will help you get in touch with language to the reality, to the healing reality, to the healing power of God, to the healing power of your community, right? But poems are not autobiography. Even if there's an autobiographical poem, like this happened to me and whatever, right? That doesn't mean every poem is about that. It's about what you take from the poem. So with Gregory Pardlow, his father, the urn, with this poem, with my experiences, they're not like, it's not like you're being cross-examined on a witness stand. You're like, the facts, only the facts, man, thank you. And you're like, yes, this is what, no. Poetry is trying to talk to, like, I went through this stuff. I saw these things. I think there's some lesson to be learned about the human condition, about humanity as a whole, that can be learned from what I went through, so other people don't have to go through that to learn that lesson, to help the world out in some sense, right? All that to say, this poem is set in Iraq. You'll be able to tell very easily. And we'll talk about how language is being used in the same way we talk about Gregory Pardlow's poem. going forward. It's called Funeral Pyre. Again, this is my poem, so if you have any complaints, put them in the chat, put them in the comments, tell them, hey, don't like you. Horrible poem. I'm here for it. Don't worry about it. White green flames, night vision lines, bracket the minaret, outline the courtyard square. The golden sands that appear a cold, dark green, an eternal crystalline lawn, surveyed by rifle scopes. All right, so let's just go through that, right? We're doing a description, right? We're using language to describe the world. So the world here is viewed through night vision goggles. If anybody doesn't, I'm not sure, but lots of people own night vision goggles. If you have never had a chance to look through them, like you can look at videos taken through like night vision goggles, or if you even just Google Lear, L-E-A-R, capital L-E-A-R, or F-L-E-A-R, flare or Lear imagery, you can see what night vision goggles look like. Everything's green, and the things that are hot are white. So if you're looking through the world through night vision goggles, it looks a certain kind of way. And so, just describing of the setting here, right? White, green flames. You have the green and the white flames of everything you're seeing, right? In your night vision goggles. The minaret is the top of a mosque, or the beautiful dome and point of the mosque, right? And the courtyard around it, right? And we have the golden sands, which are the sands of Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever, appear as a cold, dark green because the sand actually lets off. It's actually funny. In Iraq, actually, it can be 120, 128, 130 during the day because it depends on where you're at, but in a desert, sand lets off heat very, 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 very fast. So you can go from 120 degrees in the daytime to below freezing at nighttime. Because it's sand. It lets off heat super fast, absorbs it super fast. So it's super hot during the day and freezing at night. You can literally have frost on your rifle barrel in the morning when you wake up, even though it was 122 degrees the day before when you're in the desert. So at nighttime, the sand appears as a cold, dark green in your night vision goggles, right? No body heat, no nothing. It's just a cold, dark green. Again, surveyed by rifle scopes. There are night vision rifle scopes people use to look out there, okay? In this village, folks say, God crumbles the old moon into stars. On the night of the ambush, we could see our platoon commander's body, pierced all through with shrapnel, blood, and rags. The last shreds we saw. So let's stop right there. Even though it's not a stanza break, we're going through one thing. We're going from one image to another. So I just want to start with saying, in this village, I don't know how many people have ever had the opportunity to be to the Middle East. Afghanistan especially is a very special place in a lot of ways. Not only for Afghanistan, the literacy rate is very low. So even like the road signs that exist just say like, they don't even say, like, they say a name of a town, but no miles or kilometers to it, right? So in Afghanistan, there aren't even very many road signs because nobody can read them. Like 80% of the population is illiterate, and that's not their fault. They just never had the chance to go to school. But they have this really super interesting conception of history of the world. Like so let me just take a step back and talk about myth in general, and the way that myth operates in cultures. The people in Afghanistan who are not in Kabul, the ones who are not in Kabul, so which is most of the country. Kabul's like this big. There's only one highway in Afghanistan. It's Highway 1. It runs a circle around Kabul. After that, you're on dirt roads or no roads. So just remember that too. Kabul, Bagram, in Kabul, this was talk about Kabul. There's no roads but one highway that goes around it, and then intersections within that highway. It's like a 1 mile circle. The rest of the entire country, no roads, dirt roads, if even roads at all, right? And so the people there have this weird, that's not weird, I think it's actually a very beautiful conception about time, is that there was like the myth of like Zeus and Odin in the Western sense, the beginning of the world, creation, like the gods were walking among men, like we're talking about Thor type stuff. We're talking about the Odyssey, the Iliad. That stuff happened not very long ago. There was like like God in Genesis said like let there be light, and there were pit men and there were animals and there were whatever, and then and then so oh my gosh, God created the world and there were men and He said let there be light, and then the Russians invaded, which was like in the 1980s. Then the Russians came in and invaded us, and then the Americans came in and invaded us. And so you're talking to 20 or 30-year-old people, the life expectancy, just because of the conditions there, is not above 45 for anybody, especially women, which is a whole different thing we'll get into separately. But there's this unity of time that happens in Afghanistan and Afghani culture when you're in Afghanistan that, like, because there's no written history. There's nobody recording stuff. There's no road signs. There's no mileage signs. There's 15 miles to Kabul. No. There's freaking 50 miles. No. There's 15. It's not like the Pakistan border will be up in 30 minutes. No. There are no written documents. There are no written histories in the most of the country. In Kabul, maybe. University of Kabul, sure. But the fact that, like, there's this really amazing, like, unity of the foundational myth of the country, of how the gods, right, how Allah and a lot of the Muslim communities came down and said this to Muhammad, and Muhammad came out here, and there were some of the Majdi who were with him who came to Afghanistan, and some of the Majdi did teachings here, and we are in there, but like you would think that happened 20 years ago. Muhammad did this, and then the Russians invaded, and then they left, and then the Americans invaded, and now they're here and kind of left. It's all cram-packed so tight. And so in the line here, right, I say in this village, folks say God crumbles the old moon into stars, the old moon into stars. Like people in Afghanistan who I work with and talk with and saw have such a more beautiful conception of the world than we do in the West. There is magic. They believe in magic, not like fucking Disney World, magic, pay us $100, magic. No, like magic, like they believe that there's a spark of divinity in existence, that God is real, that God walks among us in different times, because they still believe that we're in the beginning times, not the end times, because they collapse all the time. And so there's like, yeah, Odin, Thor, and Allah and God, and the founding of the industry, and then Russia, then America. And it's just so interesting to see the different perspectives of that. That literally you would have a person say in an Afghani town that God would crumble the old moon into stars. Because if you're looking at the world, like they don't have telescopes in the rural Afghanistan outside of Kabul. They don't know anything about Ptolemy. They don't know anything about Copernicus. They don't know anything about Galileo. They know how the world looks to them. And so you will have people say, and I think it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen when talking with people from there, is remember because you have a full moon, right? And you have a new moon. So a full moon, for those who don't know or those who don't understand the image, is very bright. A full moon is very bright. In fact, the full moon is so bright sometimes in the East, in the Middle East and Africa for sure, the moon and the sun look a lot bigger and closer than they do in North America. So you have a full moon, and then after that you have a new moon. So it goes from full to very quickly nothing, right? But when the new moon is so dark, because the light from the full moon is not there anymore, right? The new moon makes the night star dark. You can see more stars because of it, right? So the people in Afghanistan who've never been to school, not a day, not grade school, not elementary school, not college, not nothing, would say the old moon, the old full moon, was crumbled and broke up into the stars they could now see. So my point in bringing this image up is that look how we are all as humans touch trying to touch reality using our language as a prosthesis, as a way to get there, as a prosthetic limb. And look how these individuals who I have the utmost respect for were using language to make sense of their reality. We have a full moon. We can't see many stars, even in the wilderness in rural Afghanistan, because the moon is so bright. But now we have the new moon, no moon visible. We can see more stars. And so they would say that God crumbled the old moon into the new stars they get to see, right? And that's just chef's kiss. Just beautiful language. Okay. So I spent like 10 minutes talking about 3 lines of my own poetry. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm not trying to be a douche. All right. But but really is important talking about how language works that way, right? So now we go back to the present. So that's talking about the setting, the scene, Afghanistan, Iraq, the whole thing. On the night of the ambush, we could see our platoon. So remember, and I know there's some new viewers who just popped on, so we're contrasting, right? So the first sentence here, right, we're talking about what the world looks like through night vision goggles or through a night vision scope on a rifle, okay? The white green flames, the bracket and the minaret, okay? We're talking about how the world looks through a rifle scope. Now in the first 3 lines here, we're talking about how the world looks through the eyes of an Afghani citizen, like somebody in rural Afghanistan, not in Kabul, who has not known anything, who's not even literate, who can't read, but has been told these old traditions. And the traditions are, just to go once over again, like God and Allah were battling for the world, and then the Russians invaded in 1985, but they only wait 1985. Then the Russians invaded, then the Americans invaded, and now we're here. Like it's like the beginning of the world, Russia, America, here. And there's no distinction or recorded history about the difference, all right? So then we talked about why in the village, why that works. So now we're talking a specific event, right? And we're comparing the way the world is viewed through a night vision scope to what one might see on the night in question. So on the night of the ambush, we could see our platoon commander's body pierced through with shrapnel, blood, and rags. The last shreds we saw. So again, we're like, now the night vision scope is gone. The last thing we saw was actually, we're not in the night vision scope anymore. We're in chaos. Improvised explosive device goes off. Boom, boom, boom. Platoon commander steps on a freaking IED tripwire. Boom, gone. Right. The last thing we saw was his body pierced through with shrapnel. The blood, and so you feel like the clothing he was wearing, right, and the blood and the rags that are left, right. The last shreds we saw. Light the fire so we can see Lieutenant Dawes. His heart is an old tomcat let loose in this foreign land to be devoured by jackals and orphan children. We can see Aisha, her opium poppies growing amid daisy chains. Pressure plates sprout on her dust road. Fetid camel bodies hide IEDs. Dead man's switches triggered by touching Snicker bar wrappers, which began appearing the week after the word was passed to police call the forward AO for trash. A week later, the nocturnal, white-hot sun swallowed into the moon. So there's a lot of language there I will go through that if people are not military folk or military affiliated folk won't understand. But I just want you to understand, all those who aren't military affiliated folk and don't have an hour to spend me lecturing about this stuff, right? I just want you to see how in this poem I was trying to use language to touch the way that the world looks through a night vision scope, right? And the way afterwards, after we burnt Lieutenant Dawes' body on a funeral, poem's called Funeral Pyre. So I'm not trying to give anybody vertigo. A funeral pyre, right? Like how there was a burning, and this is why we paired it with Gregory Parlow's poem about the ashes of his father, is how Lieutenant Dawes was cremated in the field, right? Because of the state of his body, and how in the night vision goggles, a week later after Lieutenant Dawes was killed, through the same night vision goggles, the the cremation fire for Lieutenant Dawes, right, would be so bright in your night vision goggles that, remember, in night vision goggles, everything is green, and the stuff that you see that has heat to it is white, right? That the fire that was cremating him would be so hot, it would be a white hot sun that was swallowed literally. Here's the moon on your night vision goggles, and then the bonfire starts, so it was swallowed, like the whole thing was white hot because of the heat levels. So that's the comparison. So I just want to, and so that's again, like reaching out to use our language is our theme today, right? Try to touch reality using language as a prosthesis, as a false arm, a false hand, because we can't get it right every time. And so we're just trying to use language to get by and just, yeah. And so that's what that was trying to do. I can speak to that because it's a poem I wrote, and I'm, again, if you like, put in the comments, I hate this poem, you suck, we don't like you, whatever, fine. But let me just go ahead and talk about some stuff that makes sense of this for anybody else, okay? So we talked about the actual ambush, right? About Lieutenant Dawes. His heart is an old tomcat let loose. So I don't know if you know a bit about tomcats. Is that tomcats have a history of going around and making lots of little baby kitties. The tomcats are not fixed male cats, and they have a habit of going around and making lots of baby cats. Lots of baby cats. But in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's not really a problem because you have jackals, you have some wolves, you have, in Afghanistan, you have some wolves or some weird coyote hybrid dogs who just like, nom 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 nom, tomcat, nom 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 nom, right? So what I'm saying here is Lieutenant Dawes, the guy who got killed in the IED at the improvised explosive device attack, right? His heart was let loose on, like his spirit, his heart was let loose on the land to be devoured by jackals and or orphan children, because you'll see a lot of children eating, and again, this is just terrible, but again, like eating whatever they can find. So if it's a cat, if it's a dog, if it's a jackal, if it's a whatever, right? And so just talking to that. Now Aisha, okay, so now we're gonna get, because Aaron is all about the mythology, all about the all about the Arabic culture, all about the Arabic language, all about the stuff, and we can talk about that later. But Aisha is a mythical figure. She's like Athena, kind of, or if you want to go back to like a Christian or Jewish, like Ruth or like Esther in the Bible. Aisha is, and it's not a Muslim figure. Aisha is a classical Bedouin, and Middle Eastern, like pre-Islamic mythical figure. Aisha was also the name of Muhammad's youngest wife. Not talking about that here. Not that Aisha. Not that Aisha. Aisha is a mythical kind of goddess figure, like an Athena, like a Hera in Middle Eastern and Northern African culture. Not Northern African, i.e., those parts of North Africa that are Bedouin in nature. Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, right? Some parts of Morocco, actually getting more parts of Morocco, and some parts of North Sudan, right? Aisha is a mythical goddess figure, right? The goddess's name is Aisha, right? And some people attribute, and also too, if y'all don't know, the number one crop in Afghanistan for how they make their GDP, they grow opium poppies there. Opium poppies are where you get your hydrocodone, your oxycodone, your heroin, your fentanyl, your opiates from. Opium poppies. The opium dent. That's and the United States government to this day protects the opium poppy fields because that's the Afghanistan citizenry's number one and really only, except for some gems they sell, on the market. Give me a family discount. Family discount. I'm like, thanks, buddy. I like that. It's an emerald. I love it. Love Afghanistan. I love. They're the best. But like, opium is their number one export. This is where they make their money. The United States allows it and protects it. So again, trying to combine Aisha, this mythical figure, with the opium poppies that are the present day source of income. Aisha is the mythical mother, the matriarch of Afghanistan or Arabic culture, or Middle Eastern culture, Arabic culture, Bedouin culture in some ways, right? Mixing that together now with the opium poppies growing. Now, daisy chains, trying to mix two things together with the word. Again, trying to touch reality here. Opium poppies are flowers. Poppies are flowers. Opium's a product of the seed pod of the opium poppy, right? Daisy chains, daisies are also flowers, right? But daisy chain as a military term is when you have a bunch of bombs, explosive devices that are like all tripped together by one tripwire, they call that daisy chain. So the opium poppies are growing amidst daisy chains, amidst all these improvised explosive devices set to go off, right? Sprout on her dust road. Fetid camel bellies hide IEDs. So just for anybody who doesn't know, like the United States has done a lot of dumb stuff overseas. Not about going to Iraq or Afghanistan. I'll have a whole different stream on that some other day. That's not for today. I'm saying that once we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, we did some dumb stuff. We would have, as an order, and military folks, soldiers, Marines, sailors, SEALs, whatever, have to follow rules. When this happens, you do this. It's a rule. It's a standing order. It's a rule. You got to do it, right? One of them was, like, if you see a dead camel on the road, you've got to go try to clear it. You guys, it's like if you're driving down Ohio or Wyoming or Colorado or Georgia or anywhere you have deer or elk or large animals or even freaking possums, right? You hit the freaking deer, shoot, yeah, car's effed up. Now we got to move the deer off the road, right? So same thing. Sometimes there'll be dead camels or dead whatevers on the side of the road in Afghanistan, dead dogs, dead cats, whatever, on the side of the road in Afghanistan or in Iraq, right? And our orders would be to go clear it off the road. Well, the people who didn't like America being there or didn't like Russia being there before decided, oh, it's their orders that they have to go move every dead camel, drag it off the road, or dispose of it. They have to move every dead dog off the road. So what are we going to do? We're going to put bombs inside the bellies of the dead camels. So it's every order of every U.S. military person, man, woman, whatever, to go move the dead body of the camel or dog or cat or whatever off the road. And the people who didn't like our presence there, Americans' presence there, start inside the dead bodies of these critters. The same thing, this is the last part now, so that's the IEDs. IEDs is improvised explosive device, a roadside bomb, improvised, something that, it's not like a bomb like you think, like Snidely Whiplash, with a fuse throwing the actual like bomb looking, no, it's like something you homemade, it's a homemade bomb, right? And dead man switches are something like, if like a guy's got like, imagine Snidely Whiplash sitting there with Dudley Do-Right, and he's twisting his mustache and has a switch where he's waiting for Nell to come across the track so he can push the thing and explode it. A dead man switch is the guy who's controlling the bomb has a hand on his thing. He's pressing, the button down. So if he dies, if somebody shoots him or whatever, the fact that he's letting off the switch when he dies, that sets the bomb off. So it's not you have to press a button, it's the button's pressed, and as soon as it's unpressed for any reason, including you're like, hey man, drop the detonator. He's like, fine, drop. That sets the bomb off. That's what a dead man switch is for those who don't know that. I'm sorry if I'm being too specific with stuff. And so dead man switches triggered by touching Snicker bar wrappers. So there was a thing that happened in Iraq and Afghanistan where U.S. soldiers. Okay, so let me start at the bottom. Police call is what we call like basically being a gardener, a cleanup expert. Police call the base, police call the barracks, police call whatever. Police call means you spot every little single piece of trash. You pick it up, you throw it away. We're beautifying campus beautification, Marine Corps barracks beautification, Iraq beautification, Afghanistan beautification project. The people who were in Afghanistan and Iraq who did not like the fact the U.S. and NATO countries or whoever was there got word that all of our commanders were done trying to fight the bad guys or bad guy whatever, and that we were trying to beautify the country. And so the order came down that every soldier, Marine, sailor, SEAL, Ranger, whatever, was going to beautify the country by going and picking up trash. So what did the people who didn't like Americans there did? The bombs, the IEDs, the things that would kill and maim thousands of American soldiers over the course of the 10 years, 20 years, a Snickers bar wrapper. They would take a Snickers bar wrapper and make that piece of trash because we were ordered to pick it up. You can't refuse an order. We were ordered to pick up stupid Snickers bar wrappers or Slim Jim wrappers or styrofoam cups or whatever. They would make those the triggers for the bombs because they knew we had to beautify the country, and so they started using that as a thing. Okay, so police call means that the forward AO means area of operations. So basically, like you have your barrack, you have your FOB, which is like your forward operating base, right? Which is like where you have it's like your fort, it's like your little fort, your little pillow fort when you're a kid, right? And beyond that is the AO, which is the area of operations. We're out doing stuff, right? And so after we cleaned the base up as good as we could, the base was clean, the fort was clean, everything was lovely in the base. They're like, okay, it's time to beautify the rest of the country. Go on to the AO, go out and clean up the rest, gather trash, be the Marine Corps garbage collector duty, right? And so police call not the base, but the forward AO. That's an interesting graphic for trash. And then we go back to, so basically, again, a week before. So basically, like, yeah, we started doing that stuff. Like, we started cleaning up stuff there, right? We started making the country a beautiful, more beautiful place, whatever the hell that means. And the command said that. It's not like individual Marines were like, oh, we should like make the country more beautiful. No, the command is like, we need to start making the country. We need to start doing more. We're not doing any combat stuff really. So like, go pick up trash. Like something. We're paying our military millions of dollars to be over there. Well, better do something. Go pick up trash, right? And so, like literally a week after, word passed just means that in the military setting that the command told the NCO, told the commission, the non-commissioned officers in charge of platoons, told all the lance corporals and privates on the ground to do something. So a week after the word was passed, basically a week after, Marines are on notice. You're going to go out the base next week and at your forward operating position, at your AO, your area of operations, you're going to be out there and you're going to be picking up trash. If you see a Snickers bar, you see a freaking Three Musketeers bar, you see a damn styrofoam cup, you see a freaking bag of used popcorn, you see a Slim Jim wrapper, you're picking that up. We're beautifying this country. You are under orders. Leave that stuff and don't leave that stuff there. Pick it up, right? That's what word passed means. The word to do that, the order was passed, right? And then going back to that, after understanding that, right, a week later, again, we already went through the image here, right? But explaining how because of this series of unfortunate events and stupid mistakes, in my opinion, I'll state that out loud, of the way the United States and the Western countries prosecuted these conflicts, a week later, remember, a week after word passed, right? A week later after that, right, the eternal white hot sun swallowed Lieutenant Dawes' body into the moon, going back to the image of the infrared scope and the infrared night vision goggles. So everything is green and white. So I think that's our program for this evening. Again, if Greg, I'm gonna tag Gregory Parlow in this some way or another, and I'm gonna make him know. I'm gonna remind him of how he beat his butt in baseball. Sad for him. Um, Anybody leave comments. We have 1 week left. There is one more Boone Speaks Poetry session coming forward after this. If you have poems that you want to be reviewed by a poet, by a teacher, by a professor, online, and have them reviewed in workshops for you, either online, which you can say, do it online. Tell me about my poem. Tell me how to help me online. I can do that. If it's, hey, I wrote this poem. I'm not sure if can you give me feedback, but not like put me on blast online? Done. Just say it. The email to send it in is in the description. There's a Google Drive box, Dropbox in the description. Also, you can message me on X, comment on the freaking YouTube, comment on the Facebook, comment on the Twitch. If you have poems, you have 1 week left. You are on notice. You are officially on notice. You have 1 week left in National Poetry Month. Free poetry workshop. If you want me to review your poems, I have 3 books out. I'm not saying it's great. I make no money off them. No poet ever will. Don't ever think you're gonna make money off poetry. That's silly. But I will give you my time to review any poetry you send in and give you feedback and either claps or ideas for improvement privately if you want, or on my YouTube channel, X, Facebook, Twitch, etc. If you want me to say, yeah, critique this to me live, I'll be in there with you live on chat. We can have a back and forth. We can talk about ideas to how to make it better and how words are working, how words aren't working. You have 1 week left. Look at the description. Find out how to send it in. Send it in. Send me your poetry. This is my poetry. This is my poetry. I've been reading. Not Gregory Parlow, obviously. My poetry I've been reading. You're like, this guy's a freaking moron. Who knows? But this is my poetry. I'm putting it out there. Put yourself out there. Have a conversation. Enjoy National Poetry Month. We'll be back next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. God bless you all and so much love. Take care and good night.